Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and I often treat my YouTube channel like a little bit of a diary, and sometimes when I see something that blows me away, I just have to talk about it, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, I know I've yapped about the whole Epstein stuff for a few days now. I've talked about it in the last couple of weeks, but I didn't think I'd be speaking about it so soon. In fact, I think this might be such a wild situation that probably gonna have to hold off until something even crazier shows up. But what happened yesterday? Well, I was just minding my own business, playing some Mass Effect, recording some stuff for, Haunted Gaming. I was recording some creepypasta Jeff the Killer stuff. I was recording Linux phones for people who are interested. But I saw this clip from the House Speaker, okay? Apparently, our boy Donald Trump here, the President of the United States, was in fact an informant.
He's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down. The president knows and has great sympathy for the women who have suffered these unspeakable harms. It's detestable to him. He and I have spoken about this as recently as 24 hours ago.
So, yeah, apparently he's a goddamn informant for the FBI. Oh man, sometimes I wish you could go back to the days of like fucking Watergate or like any of the prior scandals that have ever happened and just had the internet present during it. I think it would be a goddamn laugh riot. So, yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, the Epstein files is a pretty hotbed topic. I think everyone's just kind of talking about it. And everyone's really talking about it for one interesting thing. First off, I don't want to jump in and make things like political. I'm not an expert when it comes to it. But when I talk about stuff related to the government, it usually comes around with things like surveillance. It usually comes with the government trying to take away your privacy. But this is a pretty important case. I'm sure most of you guys watching, most of you guys and gals watching probably don't like seeing innocent people harmed, trafficked, whatever. But unfortunately, we live in a world where that kind of stuff happens. Now, Epstein was a pretty notorious case. I've talked about it pretty extensively. Watch my previous videos if you want sort of a historical understanding of it. Now, the Epstein files is supposed to be a set of files that are released that hopefully shed light on the people that this sicko was connected to. Some of the most powerful people in the world. There's a lot of photographs this man has taken with some world leaders, billionaires, so on and so forth. People that have the ability to control what you and I get to do in the world today. Now, obviously, when this guy had taken his own life, allegedly, in prison, everyone thought that maybe things died with him, right? But it didn't. Those files existed. The people that apparently the Attorney General of the United States watched tons of videos on of, people getting harmed by actual sickos and still not wanting to do enough to stop this. Yeah, this is a situation where, again, tons of these files were released, but they were kind of nothing burgers, right? We want to know the reality of who in our world that is rich and powerful and the elite are connected to something so that we can course correct going into the future. Now, obviously, Donald Trump and Epstein have been friends. They've been outside. They've been on the outs. In 2007, Epstein was banned from even Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, one of his infamously powerful resorts. It's kind of like a cultural icon, I would say, in Florida at this point, over alleged unsavory conduct involving underage girls. He would use the spa to try and procure girls, but one of them, a masseuse about 18 years old, tried to get her to do things. An insider previously told Page 6. Her father found out about it and went absolutely apeshit. Epstein's not allowed back. Now, for objectivity, following Epstein's second arrest in 2019, even Trump had said that their relationship soured decades ago. So I was kind of sitting over here wondering, whoa, this is crazy if true. Now, for a lot of stuff that's been going on when it comes to the Epstein files, there's a lot of actual victims that have come out and basically said, if the government doesn't release a list, we'll release a fucking list. Which obviously has led people to wonder, hey, if the victims release a list without any conclusive evidence, then isn't that going to be bad? And I'm just going to straight up say, this could have all been avoided if the government was actually as transparent as they claim to be. Which unfortunately they're not. If you look carefully into this situation, one of the craziest things about this is the government is actually being hostile towards a bunch of the politicians that want to release all of these files with as little redactions as possible. Obviously, nobody's asking them to release the CSAM tapes or victim names. Nobody reasonable should be asking for that at all. And if you are asking for tapes, you should probably have the FBI show up at your fucking house. So obviously, the government is going out over here saying, helping these liberal Democrats and the Thomas Massey guy, the one guy from the right that came in and said, you know what? There's got to be limits to this shit, okay? There's got to be limits to the cult behavior. I want to protect human beings, as any normal person should. Well, it turns out that the DOJ is fully supporting a comprehensive file release effort, but this would be viewed as a very hostile act to the administration. Which is hilarious to think, right? Like, if you want to fucking be transparent, if you want to tell people that you're not like the other fucking elites in the world, we'll give you guys all the information. And then you actively make it known that it's hostile if you seek the truth. That is fucking insanity to me, man. Like, nobody in the cult is willing to put down the fucking Kool-Aid and think, damn, that's bad. Now, what's kind of wild to me is obviously, you know, Trump did not say that the Epstein stuff or the whole Epstein case was a hoax, but apparently the files could have had names planted inside them. I'll be real at this point. I think everyone from every side of the aisle there's a lot of people that are guilty. There's a lot of people that probably don't want their information out there. There's a lot of people that don't want these files out. Now, when I hear the word informant, what's so wild to me is that it really is not the word you should have used. Now, to give you an idea, a confidential informant, ladies and gentlemen, is somebody that is referred to as a snitch, a rat, a canary, a stool pigeon, stoolie, tout, or grass. Now, a lot of people say that to be a confidential informant or an informant, you usually have to be committing the crimes. The feds catch you and they're like, listen, we'll give you some leniency. You know, let's say that we caught you with your pants down. We want to go after the king. You know, in this case, it would be Epstein. So what, did you find Trump and you were like, hey, man, if you want to get a little leniency, if you want to maybe get away from this shit scot-free, work with us. And that's what had led to, obviously, you know, Epstein being arrested and his empire falling down. Now, if this was true at all, I would imagine the president of the United States would have probably brought this shit up years in advance. Like, bro, I'm the hero that helped get the guy arrested, that helped get the guy busted. Now look, unless there's something like shady behind that, like unless the reason behind him being an informant is that he was actually committing illegal crimes and he got caught and that's what made the feds go and flip him into an informant, that would be a different story. And obviously, for objectivity's sake, when it comes to criminal informants, any citizen who provides crime-related information to law enforcement, by definition, is an informant. So let's say that I found out my neighbor was cooking crack rocks and selling them on the streets. Now, if I go to the police station and I tell them, yo, my neighbor's selling crack rocks, I'm not a drug dealer, but technically I'm a police informant. It's a different, you know, sort of like it's a much different context, okay? There's a big difference between being a police informant because you got caught doing a crime and now you're trying to fucking, you know, reduce your charges by flipping on your homies, or you're actually just somebody that was like, man, there's some really illegal stuff going on. Let me call my friends at the FBI and get this sorted out. Now, one of the things that's always really wild to me too is when it comes to, again, the concept of a police informant. Something that I was reading about the FBI, and this is a while back, just because I'm really interested in things like undercover cops, there were some people who thought, man, does that mean that this guy was like an undercover agent? Like, did they send 007 in to destroy? No, being an informant and being an undercover agent are two separate fucking things. An informant is a snitch. An undercover agent is a guy with a badge that usually has to conceal or hide their identity in order to infiltrate a group, right? And even if you infiltrate a group as an undercover agent, you're not allowed to commit blatant crimes. Obviously, things within reason. If somebody has a gun pointed to your head and they tell you, kill this guy or do this drug, right? You have to basically use the most ultimate, like fucking like 10 charisma point checks to get out of that shit. Otherwise, unless your life is on the line or like somebody else, unless a situation is so dire, from what I've read and from what I've seen actual undercover agents like discuss, you are allowed to commit some crime within reason. But obviously, it's a very, very fine line. You can't just become a fucking criminal, and just commit some of the worst actions just to stop the bad guys. Now, if you're an FBI informant, one of the things that I also read that doesn't track with the statement the government gave was that underneath certain, usually the FBI will redact any information. In fact, one case, the DOJ versus Londano, which was a case where the Supreme Court held that the government is not entitled to a presumption that a source is confidential within the meaning of Exemption 7D of the FOIA, whenever the source provides information to the FBI in the course of a criminal investigation. Basically, the court at this point recognizes that anything informant related should and could be withheld whenever necessary. Now, obviously, if Trump really worked as an FBI informant, you would basically not have the FBI put this information in. It would usually, when you're opening up a PDF file, you would just see Trump's name blacked out with like B7D or B7C or something out there that would conceal his identity. It would just be something that would never be revealed. So the fact that the Speaker of the House just outright said that shit without really thinking twice is kind of a wild situation to me. And again, assuming that he was actually this hero informant that toppled a fucking sex trafficking regime, I would imagine he would actually talk about this, okay? I want you to understand how insane this story has gotten. We have went through so many changes, okay? So many different stories. Like that one South Park episode of like the fish sticks joke, where the story that Cartman has in his head just keeps changing the entire time into something even wilder. Like first, there was this list and the liberals were hiding it. Then the administration remember, there have been two administrations that have existed, both opposites, the Dems and the Republicans, that have actually seen this list or had the opportunity to release this list, and none of them did, okay? Because at this point, all you can reasonably assume is every single person on the upper echelon that, doesn't want this list out or is really hush-hush quiet about it probably has some guilt. The only way this situation can stop looking as goofy and dumb as it is if we just released the actual files, okay? Like at this point, if there's evil inside here to be discussing and showing to the world, that's not horrible, okay? One of the most important things about, America, right? And I'm not even an American myself. I just read a lot of history. One of my favorite topics was American history. I always was impressed for a country that was like 300 years old. The amount of progress and innovations have been just insane, right? America, in its very short existence as a country, has led to becoming the world's leader. And honestly, the country's founding principles are something that I think should pretty much be paramount throughout the entire world. I think it's just that good. And I'm not saying this kind of stuff to be like, a glazer or anything. I'm just saying I really like the checks and balances that the United States really kind of, I would say most people take for granted, right? If you go to other parts of the world where, they have the same prime minister or president for like 20 fucking years and the quality of living is shit because there's just so much corruption at the top. That's one of the things that, I always looked at America as a country where like corruption, it exists. Obviously, every country has corruption. Like, let's not be fucking naive. But I like to think that because of the various amounts of checks and balances between the legislative branch, executive, and judicial branch, that these guys would constantly be attacking each other. The way that America works, and it's almost ingenious in a way, right? It's like you have all these departments that sort of are incentivized to correct each other, right? Like, they don't want other departments to get more powerful or in some cases weaker. They all have to be on edge against each other. It's almost like you have an incentivization to work together, but also police each other. And that was one of the things that was really important, right? But now, when I look at a situation like this, more specifically, it almost feels like, organizations like the FBI that, I kind of held into real regard personally, like as of 5-6 years ago. I thought, if there's any police agency in the world that probably should be a shining example, it'd be the one that, prosecutes not only the little guy, but goes after even the ones at the very top end of the pool. But now it almost seems like it's just all a bunch of cronies that are working together to try and sell a narrative that just doesn't make any fucking sense. Look, if there is real crime being done, especially in the United States, it is up to the US to be the shining example of what a clean country does, or what a cleaner than normal country does, to ensure that the people who are the most marginalized in our society, the people that have the biggest victimization rate, children in this case, women that are trafficked, even men, everyone, those people need to be assisted. And honestly, I think like if anything good comes out of this, it's the fact that a victim's story is heard and the victims actually get the justice. Because imagine how blackpilling it must be to not only go through the hell that you've done, but to see the people at the top are now possibly throwing out chum into the water to make it look as if they're actual heroes when maybe they actually really aren't. And look, I've said a lot about crazy stuff going on, but this is amongst, world governments taking away our, private conversations. Like, there are laws being passed in Europe where they want to read your chat messages. There are federal agencies in the US that are buying malware to hack into people's phones silently, probably without a fucking warrant to read text messages. So we're supposed to be living in a world where all of our shit is transparently seen by these government entities, but they are not willing to put the tiniest bit to provide us with a level of transparency for crimes so heinous that we as taxpayers, some as citizens, some as, immigrants, people who live in this area should be entitled to know if the people that they elect or the people that are running their offices have committed heinous crimes that they themselves, everyone would go to prison for. It's crazy fucking shit. It really is, man. We live in clown world. And part of the reasons for me making this video is to A, kind of vent a little bit, because it is something that just aggravates me, but also I'm sure that there's, people in the cult, people that will say, Muda, you're just a deranged guy. You've got that derangement syndrome. And it's fine if you think that I do. But I also want you to listen to what I've said through the course of this video and really think about it for yourself, right? That's what I always say. I'm like, be objective, be critical, think about things, okay? Don't just blindly consume the fucking Kool-Aid from whatever camp you like. There's a lot of people that are on that left side that consume Kool-Aid that you shouldn't be agreeing with. There's a lot of people on the right side that consume Kool-Aid that you shouldn't be agreeing with, right? I think there should be basic principles in life. Privacy, a right to your freedoms, and the ability for all of us to agree that harming human beings should just universally be bad. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Buddha Heart, and I'm out.